Hey, welcome to another video. In this video, we learn about X model, X bind, and X text are like directive in Alpine.js. So let's see how it is going to work. Very simple, very easy, and we'll do a practical example in here. So X model is basically using for binding value in the two ways. It is called two-way data binding. For example, you have an input in here, and if you are typing something in here, you want to bind that value to a property. That is where we use the X model, and it is useful for a lot of different cases. For example, someone is searching, you want to get the search query and search in the database, display the data. Someone is typing, you grab the name, display somewhere. So let's go to the projects that we have in here. I have already put the code and created this one here. It is very simple. We just create a component and call it message, and here is where we bind this one. So we use the X model called message, and this name should be the same. And if this one is called title, this one should be also title. So what this is going to do is it is going to watch for this property and sync both of them together. If anything was added here, it will automatically change the value of this input. If anything update here, it will change the property in here. So if I save it for now, let's remove this text and clean up, open it in the browser. Now I'll open inspect element and also Alpine div tool in here also. If you open, you see the title property in here. So here is how it works. If you are entering a hello in here, you can check both of them are updating at the same time. This is called two-way model binding, and this is how you will use the X model. Now if you want to display this one in the, let's say, a paragraph at the bottom in here, you cannot do something like Vue.js using this one. You are going to use X text in here, and X text is very useful. X text is always updating what is inside the element. There is one X text, the other one is X HTML, which we will explore in the future with more example, but it does similar thing. But if you write HTML code, it is still rendering that. So for text, if you write HTML, it is not rendering HTML, it is just outputting whatever you put. So on this one, we are going to display the title. Now title is the value of this title in here. If I save it, now let's say, okay, I'll come here, refresh my page, and now whatever I display in here, hello, it will be displayed at the bottom here, and the same thing will be like updated here. For example, if you update in here, as I said, it is two-way model binding. You update here, press enter, it did update the same property in here. So it is really useful to do them together. So now the other thing that you have to learn in here is HTML. Now as I said, I'm not going to do a lot of things. If you put X HTML in here, you can come here and write HTML code also, and it should work the same way. Okay, if I come in here, if you display like hello in here, it works. But if you put let's say a strong tag in here and again put hello, you can see that tag is strong. So if you want to have a text put or like an input which has HTML, you can use X HTML in here, and it doesn't matter whatever data you enter into it, it will display that properly. So that is basically X model and X text and HTML. One more thing you have to notice is sometimes you don't want the text to appear directly. As soon as like a user type, it is updating, and sometimes this is not what you want, especially in the search box. For example, when someone is searching for, let's say, a dress, you don't want to send 5 requests to the server. You want to wait until someone like finish typing, and then you are going to send like call a function to display the search. That way the Alpine also like take care of this one using other like input modifiers. They have a lot of example in the documentation, like how you can use it in the text area, checkbox, and all of this. But if I come at the bottom in here for the modifier, they have lazy, and the lazy is the same thing, like it is waiting until like sometimes, and then it is going to do something. It has number, which you can put number in here. It has debounce, which we are going to use now. Debounce is basically how long it will take. For the default value is like 250 millisecond, and then it is updating the value. So if you come here and modify this one with debounce, and it is going to wait a few milliseconds, and then it is like changing the value. So if I refresh it, for example, you are writing dress 200 milliseconds, then it is updating. You can update the timing. Sometimes you want to have like 1 second, which is 1000 millisecond. Okay, if I refresh it now, let's put like clothes 1 second, then it is updating the value, and it is really useful. Sometimes you don't want to fire this event every time user puts something. This is the modifier for X model. I hope it is a clear understanding of this one. And the next thing that we were supposed to learn is the bind. Bind is really useful, so I'm going to use the same thing in here. For example, let's create another component, and I'll put a h3 in here, display image here. So what I want is, I want to have an image in here. I want user to enter image in input, and I want to display that image below that. So how would you do this one? So I will just put a h3 now, h4 in here, paste image URL in here. This is going to be for the image URL, and I want to display that image below that one. So how would I do this one? The user enter the image in this input, and it is going to update this image. Now I can display that in the image directly in here. Now typically you would say, okay, you might display it in here. How would you do this one? I'll show you. Now this is where bind is useful. If you are entering any of these HTML attribute data dynamically, you have to use X bind. For example, you come here, the source of this one will be dynamic, so we will use X hyphen bind colon. Now the source of this one will be dynamic. Now what is the source of this one? It is going to be image. And if the alt is not dynamic, you can hardcode this one, display image, something like this one. It is fine. But if alt is also dynamic, you can use X bind. Now here is a short form of using X bind. Both of them work the same way. So this is the shorthand of binding value, and this one will bind dynamic value based on this one. So for this one, I will just put like this, and let's see if this is working or not. So display image, by default it is showing as no image. So let's come to and splash and pick an image. For example, this one. I'm going to just grab the image URL. Let's come here and display it in here. This is how it works, basic and simple. Now to make it more fun, you can say, okay, if the image is not empty, then display it. You can use the xf or let's show. So let's try this one. We can use xshow in here and see if image is not equal to this value, which is empty, or by default you can assign it to null also. So if you save it, now let's come here, refresh it, the image is not displaying in here, correct. Now let's, okay, I think I lost the image URL. I will bring it down, you enter it, now it is displaying in here. So that was just an example of how you can use xbind. Now the bind works for everything, either it is placeholder, data attribute, anything, you have to use xbind. As I said, the shorthand for xbind is this one. So that was all about X model, xbind, xhtml, and yeah, that was all about this. So I hope this video has been informative. Thank you for watching. And the thing is, all of these directives are very important for me to teach in separate video and do practical work on them. I can't put all of them in one video because it is like hard to understand. For example, loop is remaining, Xignore, and like Xref. Each of them should be worked with a practical example. So in the future video, we will focus on them, and then we will go on the practical projects also. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.